On this episode, we're talking about the people organization, its importance for strategy and culture, and so much more. Get ready to take another step with us on The Perfect Route. Welcome to the show, listeners and viewers. I am pleased to introduce Iraya Corley, our guest for today. How are you doing?
I am doing well this bright and early Thursday morning. I'm super excited to be here and just so humbled and honored that you've asked me to be on your show.
Oh, it's a pleasure's all mine. And I hope our audience gets as much out of today's session as I think we will. Um, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So I've been in the corporate, we'll say, world for over 20 years in various industries, starting out in the legal world for quite a bit of time, and then doing a small stint in media, and then making my way over to tech. And right now, I'm currently back in the media space. And so here we are.
Oh, that's great. How did you get involved in HR? What brought you into the field?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. So I grew up having to navigate systems pretty early: healthcare, educational, financial systems, legal systems, corporate systems. I learned young that institutions shape your access, your stability, your trajectory, whether you understand them or not. I had to figure out how to manage my own finances, advocate for myself in school from a very early age, and how to build a path without a blueprint. I learned how policies impact real people, how much clarity and access truly matter. And I learned that systems aren't designed intentionally, that burden falls on the individual. When I entered corporate America, first in executive support and then more formally in HR operations, which leads us here, I realized something really clicked for me. Organizations are systems too. And HR is one of the only functions that touches all of it: leadership, performance, compensation, culture, equity, growth. Early on, I saw HR as support, making sure leaders had what they needed, making sure employees felt heard. But over time, especially working in high performing environments like Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, and WeWork, my perspective shifted. I started to see HR as infrastructure. The way you design onboarding impacts retention. The way you design feedback impacts confidence and performance. The way you design compensation and promotion systems impacts equity and trust. The way leaders are coached impact culture at scale, and none of that is soft. It's structural. So my lens evolved from solving individual problems to asking bigger questions. How are we designing the system? Who benefits from it? And who has to work harder to navigate it? And how do we make it more transparent and sustainable? Because I didn't grow up with inherited access, I'm very sensitive to insider dynamics. I care about building organizations where people don't have to decode unwritten rules to succeed. Today, I see HR as the place where business strategy and human experience meet. It's not just about compliance or policies, it's about designing environments where performance and dignity coexist. That evolution from navigating systems for survival to helping design them intentionally is what keeps me in this work.
That's great, and so inspired that you think about all of those different factors as you've gone through your career. Um, I know a lot of people take things like access for granted, for example,
Mhm.
and I'm also a systems thinker. So, that's one of the things I was hoping we'd get a chance to mention today is the fact that HR is a system, and as you mentioned, it's enterprise wide.
Mhm.
It as you said, it really does affect and touch everybody in the organization,
Mhm.
and it it's one HR is one of those things where you don't know as an employee or a manager that you need it until you need it, and sometimes it's too late.
And I mean, we'll touch on this later, but that's the big problem with HR, right? HR is usually seen as a reactive measure when it should be a proactive measure in a true business partner. And that's one of the big, like, I don't want to say it again, but the big issues. People don't realize they need it until they need it. But It should have been built into the ecosystem from inception.
Mhm. That's an important thing to remember, and and this is something we may touch upon later on as well. But HR is so crucial to the value chain of the organization that I honestly feel organizations that don't invest in their HR function are missing out on a great way to drive the organization forward.
You are absolutely right. HR is critical to business operations, manager capability, and culture building. And without those three functions, your business is going to fail.
Mhm. Yeah. Can you talk about a recent initiative that you thought really captured strategic potential of HR for you?
Yeah. One initiative that really demonstrated the strategic power of people, equity, and experience, which is what I renamed the org, that I had the humble pleasure of being able to lead. It was the HR org, and I changed the name to people, equity, and experience. And one of the things that I did, I built our leveling framework, well, one of the many things. I built leveling framework, compensation architecture, performance development plans, and manager check-in rhythms that tie everything in together. I intentionally renamed the org from HR to people, equity, and experience because the work is fundamentally different. It signals that our mandate is not transactional. It's about architecting clarity, equity, and a meaningful employee experience that supports the business and the people. This initiative worked because it was designed with the whole system in mind. It solved real business challenges, role ambiguity, inconsistent expectations, uneven manager capability, while also elevating the employee experience and embedding equity into every step. Every component reduced friction, anticipated questions, and gave leaders the clarity and confidence they need to lead well. And because everything connected, it created alignment across the entire organization. It showed what happens when people, equity, and experience isn't just supporting the business, it's shaping how the business grows, how leaders lead, and how people thrive.
The thriving part really resonates for me. Um, and we don't use that word enough in organizations. You know, uh, one of the taglines I use in my coaching business is, "Do you want to survive or do you want to thrive?" And I feel that organizations sometimes just, they're happy if people, and this sounds awful, they're happy if people are just surviving and getting by without finding the joy in their work.
I absolutely agree. But here's a little extra added in feature. When you're thriving is when true innovation can actually take place. People who are in survival mode, that are in daily 9 to 5 grind mode, they don't create. They don't start things from scratch. They don't think out of the box because they're just thinking one, two, three, four. They're not
Mhm.
thinking 5, 15, 20, you know what I mean? They're thinking in a very linear way. When you're able to thrive is where that true entrepreneurial spirit comes from, even within the workplace, where you're thinking of new programs, new initiatives. So getting your employees to thrive is where every single business wants their employee base to be, because that's when you're going to have true innovation, true thinking outside of the box, and people will feel free to do these things. Survival mode puts everyone in a standstill and they're just very stagnant and looking out for themselves to be able to just do what is needed. Cultures that thrive see advanced innovation.
That's a really good point, and it goes back to the strategic potential of HR. Uh,
Mhm.
Many managers and executives don't spend enough time thinking about strategy. They're busy fighting fires, they're busy doing the work that they know instead of facing up to the long term.
Well, I mean, that puts it at a whole different perspective, right? Managers and leaders are two different mindsets and two different skill sets. And managers are people who manage the work, and leaders are people who drive innovation and really rally the troops in a way that gets them to be truly productive.
Hmm.
And I think when managers are putting out fires is because one, they may not have the leadership skill. They were promoted into being a manager without actually being a true leader. They were great ICs who the company just didn't have a highly promotable IC track. So they made these people managers without them actually being leaders and having those capabilities to really support a workforce, support ICs. Also, when managers tend to put out fires, so to speak, it's because they're not necessarily partnering with HR or their people org in a strategic way. When managers are able to partner in an efficient, collaborative way, there will be less quote unquote fires to be put out because you're going to have someone who's highly skilled in people advising you along the way. But then also, if the business is really hiring correctly and also understanding what it needs to mobilize and really support a workforce, they're going to hire a manager that's not going to have those fires in the first place, to be very honest.
That is an excellent point. And uh, I think, supervisors, managers, executives, and employees often forget that there's a big difference between doing busy work and doing valuable work.
Mhm.
And HR can actually help set up the members of the organization so they are contributing value and it's not as painful or difficult as just going into survival mode.
Yeah, I mean, an organization never wants to be in survival mode ever. I mean, that's going to kill productivity and culture in one word. Survival kills everything.
Hmm. It does. It does. It changes one's perspective, and you end up fighting the fires, working on what's in front of you, or the next crisis that bubbles up on the phone or the
You
on.
become desperate,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good
right?
way.
So survival does nothing but breed desperation.
Mhm.
And you don't want desperate people in your workforce.
No, it people can tell, and people can definitely tell when we're acting from a perspective of just getting things done rather than moving the organization forward.
Yeah. And desperate people get things done. Thriving people move the organization forward.
I love that. That's a great way of
Mhm.
putting it.
Mhm.
Um, that speaks to me about leadership because that's such an important part of moving the organization forward. What are some of the most important leadership capabilities you think HR should be trying to build right now, and how does HR support all that?
I mean, leadership capabilities is actually how I found my calling into HR. When I was in executive support, one of the things that I noticed was that the executives I supported weren't always great people managers.
Really?
They were brilliant, right? And they were great at their jobs, but they weren't great at actually interacting and managing their people. And that's where I came in. Many people would joke and say I was the other side of the brain, and this other person was the other side of the brain. You put it together and you have like a great workforce. And so leadership capabilities are super important to not only the culture, but the productivity and the trajectory of any business. Right now, I'm focused on strengthening a few core leadership capabilities: clear, timely decision making, coaching and feedback that's honest, direct, and human. Feedback that, when it's given, it doesn't make you feel horrible. It makes you feel like, dang, I missed that. Next time I'm going to do it better, right?
Mhm.
You want feedback that causes, you want managers to give feedback, and you want those leadership capabilities to enable managers to give feedback that makes people better, not tears them down. Accountability, also paired with empathy, the ability to build trust and psychological safety. Those are a few of the capabilities that I'm currently building out in leadership. Um, from my perspective, the people, equity, and experience organization's role is to make these capabilities real and repeatable. I've embedded them into our leveling framework. I built tools to help managers practice them, coach leaders through real time challenges, and created rituals that reinforce the behaviors we want to see. The goal is simple and powerful. Leadership should be a consistent, observable set of behaviors that support the business and support the people. That is one thing I have been consistent about. Whenever I've gone to any HR interview, I have said HR is the function that supports both the business and the people. And it's the only business function in any organization that does both. And it's not something that depends on personality or tenure.
Good point. Good point. Um, how do you make sure HR is accessible and engaging and relevant across the organization?
Um, Number one, you have to know what seat you sit in HR. And I'm not going to say that it's always a perfect equation. When you're speaking to an IC, when you say something, you have to make sure that you put yourself in the IC's mindset, right? So you don't want to say anything about employment, right? They may take it as, oh my gosh, I just spoke to our HR rep or our people rep and they said something about, continued employment, right? Like
Mhm.
you have to make sure that you change the way that you speak to every different level. And you have to make sure that your language is clear. And so that's one of the ways that I stay accessible to a multi-tiered organization. I treat accessibility as a design principle. The people, equity, and experience org should feel clear, human, and easy to engage with. So that's what I do across the board. I centralize information so people can find it without me, should they not even want to talk to me.
Mhm.
I write in a warm voice that reduces anxiety and increases clarity. I create predictable rituals, onboarding check in surveys that ensure consistency across teams and locations. Again, adapt communication. That's number one, because the way you communicate is a big deal. So I adapt communication depending on the audience. I stay close to the data so I can see where engagement is strong and where support is needed. I build trust through transparency and responsiveness. My goal is always for the people, equity, and experience or to feel present, supported, and connected to the day to day realities of the organization, no matter someone's role, team, or location.
That's great. Um, the feeling of connectedness throughout the organization is crucial for not only strategy, but just day to day culture building.
Absolutely. I mean, when you have teams that are geographically, sparse, they're located any and everywhere, you have to figure out how to stay connected to them, how to speak to them in their language, their work love language when needed. And that is a very important feature of the people org as well, because it helps to enhance the culture overall.
And that's so important because um and as we say, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Absolutely.
You can have the best
Absolutely.
strategic plan, but if the organization's culture won't support it or is not compatible, then we're in trouble.
You're in such trouble. Mhm.
So,
Agreed.
so what does the future of HR look like for you? What's your vision for the next 3 to 5 years?
The future of the people org, I'm gonna challenge you to say people org because we don't like the word HR.
Okay.
HR is like We're going to say it's a dinosaur and it's buried, or it's a relic in a natural history museum. Okay, we're not. Um, my future, or what I think the future of the people org should be, the business should be well supported. People should be well supported, and those two things are not going to be in conflict. They're going to reinforce each other. Over the next 3 to 5 years, I see the People, Equity, and Experience Org becoming a strategic engine that's deeply human, especially with the enhancement of AI. We need to make sure that we remain deeply human in how we deliver, deeply operational, deeply embedded in how the organization grows. And that looks like using people data to inform decisions at every level, building a strong leadership pipeline, very important, with clear pathways and real development support, ensuring every employee has a high quality management experience, ensuring, well, operationalizing culture through rituals, behaviors, and systems, scaling processes that reduce friction and support growth, and creating a workplace where clarity, trust, and psychological safety are the norm. Ultimately, I want the People, Equity, and Experience org to be a function that shapes how the business works, not just supporting the organization, but actively architecting its future while ensuring people feel seen, supported, and set up to succeed.
Very good. Very good. And it's, we've touched on so many important things in today's episode already. And you've got such a forward looking view on the People org
Thank you.
that it's refreshing to hear. And I think sometimes we get so entrenched in the way things have been in working with the People organization that we forget about how they could be. So let's pretend that you've got the opportunity to rebuild HR and the People org from scratch. What would you do?
First thing I'm doing is stripping the word HR.
Yes.
I'm burying it. Um, no, I if I could restart, I would start by shifting the mindset, because it's always a mindset shift first, and then business follows. HR wouldn't be a reactive function anymore. It would step in. It wouldn't just step in when something breaks. It would be built as a intentional infrastructure from day one.
Hmm.
Uh, I I would always have the head of HR reporting to the CEO, and I wouldn't delineate from that, because HR always needs to be seen as a, if not on board, but like right under. Like, people need to see HR as a strategic business function and not just a compliance to keep us in business.
Hmm.
Um, I've spent my life navigating systems, educational, financial, legal, corporate, and I know what it feels like when the rules aren't clear or access isn't equal. So the first thing I would design differently is transparency, clear career paths, clear compensation philosophy, clear expectations, no hidden playbooks, no advancement based on proximity or insider knowledge. Second, I would fully integrate HR with business strategy. People strategy should not be an afterthought. That's usually where business fails. If a company is scaling, launching new products, entering new markets, HR should already be designing the workforce structure, leadership capability, and performance systems to support that, not reacting to it later. Third, I would invest heavily in manager effectiveness. Most employee experience issues are actually leadership capability issues. If managers aren't trained to give feedback, manage performance, lead diverse teams, or handle conflict, HR becomes the cleanup crew. I would move that investment upstream and treat manager development as core infrastructure to the business. I would also separate compliance from culture design. Compliance protects the company, which is where people usually put us in HR,
Hmm.
like the company. But culture design builds the company. Both matter, but they require different energy and different skill sets. I'd make space for HR to innovate using data, not just engagement surveys, but retention trends, mobility data, burnout indicators, and actually redesign systems based on what we see. At its core, I would build HR around one question. Are we creating an environment where people can perform at a high level without having to sacrifice their well being or their identity? Because I didn't have a blueprint growing up, I care deeply about building organizations where people don't have to decode unwritten rules to succeed. For me, HR should feel less like a gatekeeper and more like an architect, designing systems that make performance, equity, and sustainability possible at scale.
That's fantastic. And, as we strive to build supportive cultures and equitable organizations, the people org really does need to be that strategic partner, just as you've described it today. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I mean, for any leaders who happen to listen to this, to any HR people, or what I would like to call my people, um, I want you to reimagine this business function as a business partner. And I want you to reimagine what we can be and not what we previously were. As we continue to go forward, especially with AI, this people org, this pillar has the ability to really help build, create, and help the business thrive and not just be seen as an afterthought, a compliance crew, or a safety measure for the business. We can really help businesses thrive if we're positioned accordingly and if we advocate to position ourselves accordingly.
And the role of HR as not only an advocate for the people, but an advocate for culture is so important. And I wanted to thank you for sharing all of your thoughts today with our audience of listeners and viewers around the world. Um, and I hope everybody gets as much out of our conversation as I did. Thanks
I
for.
am I'm so excited. I'm so happy. And I hope the same. I hope people across the world, across different HR organizations, across different, industries really start and reimagine what this pillar can look like and how it can really help propel your business, which is going to impact your bottom line. HR is a function that can help increase revenue if it's treated accordingly. And
Mhm.
that's what all business owners want, profitability.
Yes, yes, it's so important. Well, thank you for being with us today, Iraya. And thanks to all our listeners and viewers out there for joining us for another episode. And I hope you get an opportunity to take another step with us on the perfect route.
Thank you. Keep shining, y'all.